Hi, and welcome to Under the Pallet Wrap, a podcast about life in supply chain and logistics. Each week, we set ourselves one question, and we're going to see where the conversation goes. So no big agenda, no script, just Keith and I sharing our views, our thoughts, and our experiences over the years. We hope we find it interesting, hopefully informative, maybe at times even thought-provoking. And once or twice, we're going to try our best to try and make it a little bit funny on occasion too. Probably not on purpose, to be fair. So to kick us off, we thought we should probably share a little bit about how we ended up here doing this. So we're going to answer the one question for today. What has been your journey? Where did you start? And how did you get to this point? So to kick off that wonderful, wonderful topic, Keith, tell us, how did you get started?
Well, born in Ashford, that's where it all began. And obviously growing up there, half of people's parents worked at the airport. And my dad is a builder. And I guess I was always more drawn to that because of him. But I always liked drawing and artwork. And my dream was to be a graphic designer. And problem was I didn't have a computer and didn't have access to one either. So drawing, yeah, I had I was quite behind on in terms of the technical knowledge. So by the time I got to secondary school, I realised, okay, it's a slightly different industry to what I anticipated. It's not just me drawing cartoons. So I still wanted to stay in what I would consider the world of art. So I started looking around for jobs that would be relatively creative. Sign writing, um, printing, that sort of thing. And I ended up with an apprenticeship as a printer. I showed my early ambition because I actually, on recovering from a car accident at the time, I actually walked around to all of the different places, knocking on the door and saying, "Do you have a job?" And I was posting letters, my CV, in the post. Eventually, someone gave me an apprenticeship. It was great, a small company. Um, I loved having a job, loved having the wage. Had my relationship at that point with my now wife. So I felt very grown up. Um, but after 3 or 4 years, once my apprenticeship was over, and I realised that I was forever junior, I was going to have to find myself a different printing job, and I think that was such an eye opener because I suddenly uh, changed from being an active member of a fun team with lots of banter and lots of support to a cog in the wheel, really, uh, who didn't have that much interest in what they were doing.
Yeah.
With a lot of old hands who have 30 years in the game, it just wasn't for me. And I could see the onset of digital printing and the rest of it that I wasn't really trained in. So I quit quite dramatically. Decided to quit my new job, my at the big printing press. Went home, absolutely delighted with myself. Told my girlfriend I've quit, and she said, "Yeah, thank God, but you're going to need another job tomorrow to pay the bills." So it just so happened that she knew someone looking for a courier. I took the job with zero expectations, but thank God I did because it opened up my world forever. Delivering to embassies, visas, passports, and documents like certificates of origin, going to embassies and consulates around London. It's like stepping into a different country 10 times a day. And yeah, I was good at the job. Before I knew it, I was the fleet manager and organising everyone's runs. It was my first taste of management. I realised that I really enjoyed that. And yeah, thank my lucky stars that I got that courier job. I think it was based on the fact that I supported Chelsea as well. I mean, it was that simple. I've never had an interview so straightforward in my life. But what about you?
We're not going to talk about football. That's too much of a sideline. There's too many other podcasts doing that anyway. So how did I start? Well, I grew up in the West Country, in Wiltshire. Wasn't a great fan of school. Didn't love it. Didn't really pay much attention. Um, left at 16. First opportunity I had, I went out. I hadn't really done particularly well in my what was then O levels. But I kind of got myself into a business apprenticeship in the local area with a tyre manufacturer, Avon Tyres. So I got to spend a little bit of time in all the different departments and understand a little bit about how business works, which was extremely beneficial to me when I look back now. But at the time when I was 16, 17, it was all a bit too sensible, a bit too quick. And the pay was just shockingly bad, which is because it was an apprenticeship, so it was a government scheme. So I had enough of that within a couple of years and went off and worked in a factory. I worked in a lathe, an engineering place that did valves for the oil industry. So I was operating lathes and stuff. Great money, shift work, easy, no responsibilities really, and enjoyed it a lot for a couple of years. Got to do a lot more things because I had a bit of money. But I did start to think, I don't know if I want to do this forever. It wasn't very exciting. And I'd seen the guys sat in the office, programming the machinery, and I thought, yeah, I could do that. So found myself a course at college to do it. Went to see the management and said, I'd like to learn the programming of this, and I've signed up to a course, but I need to have a shift change every other week so I can go to it. And they said no, they wouldn't let me do it. So I quit. Said, right, if you want to let me, I'll do it anyway. So I went back to college in the evenings and I took a job as a courier, van driving, delivering stationery and building supplies, screws and stuff like that, all around the southwest of the UK, which was hard work, actually. I got to say, I worked flipping hard at that job. It was a lot of work. And then did the college course, did really well at it. It's the best educational success I've ever had. I got a City in Guilds in computer aided engineering, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. Bored me to sleep, and swore I'd never do it as a job. So then I kind of finished the driving job and found myself out of work, and signed up with an agency and got a job sticking Spanish labels on M&S toiletries in a warehouse. Did that for a few weeks or so, and then they offered me a job as a picker there. So I took a job as a picker, and became a forklift driver, and then got into being a supervisor of a team, which I really enjoyed. But I had this burning desire to go and see the world a bit. So I'd saved up some money, so I just quit and got on a plane and backpacked around Southeast Asia and Australia and that for 6 months. Loved it. It honestly changed my life. It made me realize that when you put your mind to it, you can kind of do whatever you want. I was amazed how easy it was to circumnavigate the globe, even as a kind of a fairly naive 22-year-old, something like that. But yeah, it taught me that I could get on and do things if I really wanted to. So when I got back, I found myself back in the same warehouse for a while because I needed the money to pay off some of the debt. But pushed myself forward to look for other roles, and got the opportunity to work for Tesco. Took a job as a warehouse supervisor in one of their warehouses, a big grocery warehouse in the Midlands in Crick, quite a militant place. But yeah, it was a great a great step up for me. It kind of got me going, and it was the start of a 30+ year career now. So it's amazing how it's completely unintentional. It's just a case of it was a job at the time, but it's something about it just interested me, and I could see opportunity, and I just kept on doing it, I guess.
So you moved to the Midlands at that stage?
Yeah. So I left the West Country and went up to the Midlands. Yeah, logistics land, So, but yeah, so it feels like we both had, relatively, I guess, should we say, grassroots type start. What was the big break for you? What really kind of got things motoring for you?
I think the first break was understanding that I was actually a very good courier and a good people manager. It gave me a lot of energy and a lot of confidence. And I think, like you say, once you give something a go, you can start believing in a lot more possibilities for yourself. And
Yeah.
whereas before I'd felt a bit trapped by the whole printing limitations in my mind, I suddenly felt that the world was a bit more open and my curiosity flooded out a bit. Anyone who knows me knows I never shut up. I just ask questions, I talk all the time. And I was just asking questions in all the embassies and in the office, like what do these documents do? What's their purpose? And then I started connecting the dots, something else I'm very good at now, just trying to understand, like, how does it all connect? How can we make it better? And just asking questions and learning. And eventually, I think, in order to shut me up, they gave me a job in the office, producing the documents. And I just, like a sponge, I didn't know how to type, still don't know how to type. My first ever time in an office. And I just started producing the export documents, and so I'd be good at my job. I would ask our in-house London Chamber rep, "Am I doing it right? Why do you refuse the documents when I send them to you? And what are you looking for? Where do they go?" And he would explain about customs and um, the purpose, the actual reason behind the documents, and that just inspired my curiosity. I just realised how much more there was to know about the world. He suggested I work at London Chamber. I think that was the break. It was my first sort of big professional job, like working at London
Yeah.
Chamber with just smart clothes and up in the city. I moved up to London at that point. Moved to Tooting and commuted on the tube, and I just felt like I'd made a bit of a change. I realised that if I could put my best foot forward, I could apply for whatever job I wanted. And I think through being at London Chamber and being exposed to all the different businesses, um, one of which was Net-a-Porter, very interesting business. A lot of the businesses that would come to for my advice at London Chamber were just, with all due respect, shipping pipes and oil equipment. But all of us, apart from the bands who would ship with the carnets, I used to love that part. All of a sudden, a customer called Net-a-Porter started ringing about advice how to temporarily export goods, and they were calling me almost every day. I thought, well, that's very interesting. What do they do? Uh, the fashion world had entered my horizon. And one day I called up Net-a-Porter and said, "Did you need any help?" And they happened to be recruiting for shipping assistant role. And I think London Chamber was my first step, but Net-a-Porter was my university. I started learning and going to night school at London Chamber, getting a diploma in international trade. So my interest was sparked, my eyes were open, but Net-a-Porter was my university. I was involved in so many things, so many launches, building that business, helping to build that business. The shipping team, there were four of us when I joined. By the time I left that team, there were 40 of us, and I was managing the import side. So that was my what a great place to be is all I can say at that time. No one believed it was possible. We made it possible, and I think anyone who was there at that time, we share a bond because it's we made things happen. They allowed us to make things happen. So it taught me so much about management. I took on my own team. The confidence grew. By the time I left there, I'd started my own department, supply
Yeah.
chain compliance, and I was covering 8 countries. So to go from shipping assistant in a team of four to that, traveling the world, I mean that was my apprenticeship, for real. My life
Mm.
apprenticeship. I loved it. But what about you? You've moved to Quick. When did you feel like you were really, really on your way?
Yeah, well, I think I did a few operational jobs with Tesco. I mean, getting into Tesco was a big break. I mean, you talk about that being your university. My time at Tesco, I always referred to as the best university I could have gone to. So it's interesting that you you describe your experience in a similar way. But yeah, I did some ops jobs. So I was a supervisor at Crick, and used to look at those the shift managers. That we used to run the entire shift of 150, 200 people, and I used to look and think, God, I could never do that. That's just madness. But within a year, I was doing that, and then I went to a new site. And was part of the startup team for a new fresh DC down in Southampton, which had the Tesco's first automation in it. And the whole automation thing fascinated me. I thought it was brilliant. This machine that was just, sorting all the products into stores, and that it's awesome. So when I got a chance to join the development team of Tesco, so the sort of distribution development, I jumped at it. So I came out of operations and started working on projects and project managers, and learnt the art of project management, which has been such an incredible skill to know, because it can just apply to everything. Started with really, really exciting projects like, what's the new uniform for distribution going to be? Really, really kind of groundbreaking stuff. But you do your time, right? And you kind of learn your trade, and you learn your skill. And I obviously did a few things right, because when a senior project management position came up to lead a development for a brand new distribution center, I got the job. My boss just had faith in me, because there were definitely people with more experience than me, but he obviously saw something in the way that I went about what I did, and he gave me a shot. And we designed a new frozen automated distribution center from the ground up. So high bay cranes and sortation systems, all in minus 20 degrees temperature. So really quite a challenging environment. It was a joint venture or a joint project because the site was going to be run by a third party. So we had a company called Power Europe working with us to do it. So it was managing multiple, parts, and obviously all the automation companies, and we designed our own WMS, built it from scratch. So just an incredible thing to be involved in. And I remember when we got it live and first finished our volume tests, what an incredible sense of pride it was. And coming out of that, it really launched me in Tesco. I was the only person in Tesco to ever delivered an automation project of this scale. So I became quite in demand, and I was asked to go to South Korea from there, and it started a journey of working around the world for the next pretty much 20 years. So it was incredible. I mean, we'll get more into that in a minute, but let's have more of your story before I chirp on too long. And so where did you go from Net-a-Porter? Because that was a great base, but you've jumped from there.
Well, I was very fortunate at Net-a-Porter to be involved in many cross-functional projects. We had beauty. It was just a sort of place like you didn't have to ask if you wanted to do something, and it was there. You could seize the opportunity, because there weren't really that many of us, and you had to sort of take the bull by the horns. So I think every experience taught me more. I became more and more qualified because I had to take, I started taking more exams, and so that I was, I qualified to do the job. I took management courses. I think the massive one for me was my black belt in Six Sigma. I mean, that I started with the green belt, and it was just like my language. It was just as soon as I joined that course, it was just, oh wow, this speaks so much to me. It's the way I can articulate how I think, and I live and breathe continuous improvement. Not to use a cliche, but that's how I feel about everything. Everything I look at, I look at the systems and how they interact, and what can be removed and what can be improved. So that was a big change for me. And the black belt was, I mean, it really helped me in my job. It really helped me do my job very well. And I think because I worked across so many departments, you were talking about becoming in demand. You sort of become a little bit famous in your role. And infamous. And yeah, people just got to know me. I'm a quite personable person, very approachable. I just worked and collaborated with so many people that when I eventually decided to leave Net-a-Porter, I was just very much connected with everyone else was in the world. And I think after traveling around the world for years, up to 6 months a year, I felt like I wanted to do a job a bit closer to home. So when the job came up after 10 years of Net-a-Porter to help out our CEO's new venture, who became the chairman of a company called Flowerbox, I just took quite a big risk and I decided to go with it and repay his belief in me. But things moved quite quickly from there, and it wasn't long before I was at Cult Beauty. But I've got a lot of fondness for Cult Beauty because that allowed me to consolidate all of the knowledge that I'd gained over the 10 years and actually really do a lot with it and almost prove myself in a new environment. I think it's the most productive job I've ever had in such a short space of time. I was just able to have the confidence to do what I set out to do. I could see that well, I had a great team. I had to build a team from scratch. I started becoming known for building teams. You just get known, don't you? For
Yeah.
so I think in my case, sorting out a mess and making it coherent, uh, getting through the other side. I think making complexity simple. People started remembering me for very complex projects that I was simplifying, getting through the other side, making a success. I did the same at Colt Beauty, and from there it just really took me to French styling and far-fetched, really complicated projects, fast-paced. Had so many inquiries in the end that I thought, well, I might as well start as a consultant full time because I just want to be involved in all of these projects, and people keep asking me. So it was almost a perfect move for me. Um, all of those experiences I can share now with startups and scaling businesses, and I think I found a very sort of happy place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
It's
think
hard to
you've
believe.
shown that. You've shown that kind of
Yeah,
yeah, that real hunger for technical knowledge, right? So you're clearly very technically aware of what you do, and then you found the project management Six Sigma skill set, which kind of wraps around it so nicely to be able to deliver all that technical skill. So yeah, I mean, it's a even if it wasn't an intentional journey, it's certainly been one that's kind of built you for yeah getting out there and helping companies make a difference. Right?
I think the curiosity's remained that my absolute quest to understand. I think allows me to get to the heart of the issue because I'm never judging. I'm always asking. I'm always asking for people's perspective and how the job affects them, what they would change. I think it just helps me form a bigger picture quicker, and it just gives me so much joy. The whole logistics world. I mean, I was going to say, 25 years I've had in logistics. Dan, you've had more, similar or more. How quickly has it gone by when we're talking about our careers here? It feels like yesterday.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's one of those. I always think it's a double edged. It's a double edged thing, right? I think yeah, it just so you look at things like God, how could that possibly be 30 years ago? But then when you start to think about the things you've done, it's like my God, I've been through so much that yeah, a lot of time has passed for sure, for sure. Yeah, it is incredible. I can't remember where I'd got to, but I just finished the Frozen DC thing, right? Did I talk about going to Korea? Yeah, so I got asked to go to Korea. Yeah, it was never really a plan, never really a plan to do it, but got asked. Said no initially because me and my wife or fiance at the time were trying to plan a wedding, so it felt like a complication we really didn't need. But they kind of said, "Well, can you go out and see the Koreans, explain to them what they need to do? You're the only guy who's done one of these projects before." So I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I think I'd been there 2 days when I rung Lyra and said, "We've got to move here. This place is incredible." And that started this 20-year journey around the world. And we did 2 years in Korea. Absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was yeah, it was tough because it's a culturally very different place, but it was a hugely inspiring and a great sense of achievement. And then went to Central Europe and did DCs in Czech Republic and Slovakia as a sort of distribution director. And then over to Turkey and did a similar role there, which also involved the replenishment in store. So I learned a lot about replenishment systems and, that whole cycle of how buying things and ordering them and all this sort of things work together. So I think, I've always kind of been an operator. I've always been the people guy who ran the people. So I have good insight into how to run an operation and how supply chains and automation and all that works. On the wider supply chain, I hadn't really got involved in Tesco. It was very much a distribution operations and sort of fulfillment end, so the downstream part. So Turkey kind of gave me that first view of some of the upstream work. But once the Turkey job was done, Tesco wanted me to come home, and I didn't want to come, so I quit and I ended up in the Middle East. I went to a company called Al Shire, one of the big retail franchising businesses in the Middle East. A lot of British and American high street brands. If you walk around a shopping mall in the Middle East, you see all the shops that and Al Shire was one of the biggest in the region doing that and grown really quickly. They'd gone from taking on mother care in about 20 years, had about 50 brands, and their supply chain was struggling like crazy. They'd grown fast, hadn't invested in the infrastructure. So I took on the job of trying to get it straight and get it working well. Not just me, I was the logistics director, but we had a VP of supply chain who became a great mentor of mine, Tony. I guess it was the real test, because like we talk about, Tesco was a great university of learning for me. I learned so much in that business, but it was always that sense of, do I really know what I'm doing, or do I just know Tesco? So when I stepped out and went to the Middle East, it was a really big test for me. Can I do this in a different company, in a different culture, in a different part of the world? I guess the good thing was the answer was yes, because I did 3 years there, and we really got things turned around. When I joined, I used to talk to the commercial teams there of all the different brands that we were running, and they were like, we just want to be able to use a third party because the internal logistics at Al Shire is just terrible. You guys are just, you're curtailing our commercial capabilities. We just need to get out and use a third party that can allow us to grow. And so it was an interesting start. So everybody was basically telling me they wanted me fired and gone. But over the next couple of years, we really turned it around, and we became very much on the front foot with new brands. It's like one of the big selling points of going to Al Shire was it had this a great supply chain and logistics service that could really help stimulate your growth and enable the businesses to flourish. And I loved it. But I was ambitious and wanted to do more. So my boss was going nowhere. So I moved on and ended up doing a big shipping job. I moved to a marketing company, bizarrely, back in the UK for a while, and got into shipping products around the world. So they ran big programs with supermarkets, etc., mostly around Europe. And again, had grown very quickly. It got themselves into a little bit of a mess with their supply chain. So I came in to put some structure and some control and some process in, and I learned all about international logistics in that role as well, which was fabulous. From there, I went back to the Middle East for a couple of years because I didn't like living in the UK at the time. So we wanted to go overseas again. So I left again and went back, and then got the opportunity to go to Thailand. And we'd always wanted to go back to Asia. So it was, as a family, and I hadn't really spoke about this, but as we've gone along, I got married, I had kids. All the time we were traveling around the world, they came as well. And we ended up in Thailand working for a company called DKSH, which is a big multi-billion dollar business that distributes FMCG and pharma products to countries all across Asia Pacific and the world, but the majority of it was Asia Pacific. And I went there to help them modernize and transform their supply chain. It became a bit of a theme in my career of coming in and transforming things, modernizing, bringing in the modern technology, automation, etc. And DKSH had been trying to do this for a while, and but had never really had somebody to grab hold of it and do it. So I took that job. 3 months in, the global head of supply chain management, who was their executive committee member, quit pretty much overnight. And I got the tap on the shoulder and said, "Could you stand in for this guy and take on the main board role?" So like, okay. So at that stage, I was then running this major strategic project to modernize and running the operation for 18 countries. So it was crazy. The first year was just insane. I think I had about 30 people reporting directly to me. It was just, yeah, completely mad, but great fun. I mean, it was, we were just doing so much. And then, kind of wrestled it under control and did 5 years on the main board at DKSH. And God, learned so much from that experience. It was brilliant. But after then, sort of 20 years away from home, most of that time away from home, kids were growing up, wanted to go to university, so we came back. And a bit like you, I thought, gosh, I've learned so much in this journey. I'm going to just come and do it myself and help other companies and to grow and to be able to use their supply chain to make a difference in their business. And so for the last few years, that's what I've been doing. I did briefly go into a customs job, which you would have probably been a lot better at than I was. But it was an MD role, so I was doing the leadership side more than the technical. But that was with a private equity business, really interesting, very different environment to what I've been in before. But again, learned so much, and I think I come out of it, of all of that, and now obviously working as a consultant and fractional leader, that I just think you've experienced and seen so many things that whenever you go and talk to a company, you can relate to it, and you can see their problems, and you understand. You've seen this sort of things before, and it's been to have such a rich and varied career up to today. I think it's really put myself in a very privileged position of being able to help others. I'm sure you would say the same thing. But it's great to be able to go in and just help businesses. But we've talked a lot about great successes and really exciting stuff that we've done. There must have been something along the way that you really tripped up on and was a real difficult thing to overcome. Have you got a kind of a really memorable disaster that you had to kind of
Oh, well, it's like a seesaw. Well, it's easy to look back with rose-tinted glasses and see, oh, it was easy. Oh, how did I get here? But there's lots of stress. I mean, in terms of launches and so many things I wish I had done better. I can't think of a particular example. I mean, I'm remembering very, very specific examples, like what I learnt about management by doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing. That they were my big eye openers. I think my curiosity has always allowed me to sort of take things on, but then again, be rational with it. I wouldn't like to call a lot of these things bad experiences because they all teach you, don't they? They all teach you for the next part. And at the time, they seem very stressful. What's going on? Yeah, how many days have I been working now? And on the trot, and you think, how are we going to get through this? But I think there's always a belief inside that you're going to, and you're going to learn, and you're going to work it out. I'm a bit obsessive with it, so I never give up. And there's been loads of times where I'm trying to crack a very difficult nut, but I think I've always had that underlying belief that calmness prevails and we'll get there.
Yeah, and I think it is a little bit of I think to do well in supply chain logistics, you need that determination, that resilience, right? Because you're always fighting challenge and difficulty. I mean, it's the kind of the nature of what we do is overcoming adversity and to make sure products are where they should be at the right time, and to make businesses work, right? I mean, I think that's we sit in the background, but we're there to make sure that businesses work, right? So
Yeah, I think one of the big learnings that I have had personally is that we're all human, and sometimes, put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do something like absolutely magnificent. When the easiest thing to do sometimes is to pause and say, what are we doing? Let's talk. What do we need to do here? Rather than that mindless hammering away. I think that's what it's all taught me, to raise things quicker, to be open. And I think it benefits me. I think it serves me well just to be open and accommodating and approachable because I want someone to turn around and say when something's getting a bit much, and I like to be able to do the same thing. And I think the most difficult times in my career is where maybe haven't felt that way and thought that the onus was on me to make it happen, and have done, but to the detriment of my well-being. Just working too hard, too long, and probably unnecessarily, because certain things can be left. You don't have to fix everything. So, but from what you're saying, Dan, you still seem to have the same excitement you did as that young boy in Crick. I think I certainly do.
oh, that's definitely true. Definitely true. And as you say, you go through some. I've been through some pretty horrific problems that you've had to overcome. But as you say, you always believe you're going to get there. And then when you're looking back, you kind of think that was actually amazing. That was incredible what we did, and I'm so proud of it. And it taught me so much. I've obviously I've opened a lot of new operations, and they're always difficult. You always go through some pretty serious trauma and incredible hours and commitment that are needed to go through it. But when you look back on it, you always think, wow, look what we made, look what we did, look what we changed. Yeah, I don't regret having to go through those difficulties, because I think if you didn't, I don't think we'd be as good and successful as what we do, because you wouldn't have had the experiences to pull on, right, and to learn from. I
Well,
think
you
it's
think that everything was going to go right all the time.
I always believed it would, but it definitely didn't.
Well, yeah, but you know it doesn't. Yeah, valuable, isn't it? You're not spoilt. Spoilt with the glory. You also had the grit and the glory.
Grit was there was a very thought I was having as you said that, is that, yeah, you do build up this kind of grit of I'm not going to be beaten on this. We are going to make it. We're going to get it over the line. We are going to deliver it. And I think it kind of makes you the person you are, right? I think these people who are naturally brilliant at things aren't necessarily the greatest achievers, because it's always too easy. And then suddenly, when something doesn't work and it doesn't go well, they haven't got what it takes to fight through and still deliver, and they cave. And I think those who have put themselves out there and have suffered and have struggled and have failed and got up and carried on and learnt from it, they're the ones that I think always end up in, with I think probably the best lives and the most interesting stories, because they've truly lived. And if it's all been a bit too easy for you, I don't think you don't have a story so much. As if it's just about success, it's not as interesting, and I don't think it makes you such a rounded and successful person if it's just come easy.
It's very, very hard to, yeah, for sure, very hard to teach uh, when you've only got good stories. It's very, very hard to teach and build a capable team, really, a resilient and capable team, self-managing team. If they think if they think everything's easy, they're not really looking around. They're not really understanding the risks and what could go wrong right in front of their eyes. And
Well, you don't believe anything will go wrong if it never has, right? If you haven't had the experience of being tripped over and knocked sideways, and then you're not going to go into things thinking that's going to happen, and therefore making sure you're prepared, or you're looking at both ways, or you're just going to go headlong into it, and sooner or later it's going to, that train's going to hit you, and you won't know what to do with it, because you've had no experience of dealing with that stuff on the way. So whenever I was recruiting people, I was always looking for people who had been through a bit of adversity, who had failed, but recognized that they had and learnt from it. To me, that's a huge learning in your life. You don't want people who have always achieved, because you're just not sure that if things got difficult that they'd be able to deal with it, because they haven't had to before. So I think you need the scars, and I don't think anybody who's had a long career in supply chain or logistics has ever not got scars, right? I mean, it's we always say you're only as good as your last failure generally. So
Absolutely. And then to round up, if you didn't get into supply chain, can you imagine what you might have done or what you would have wanted to have done instead?
Oh, I know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a rock star, mate. I mean, I just wanted. I was a singer in a very interesting band when I was about 18, and that was what I really wanted to do. But we weren't really that talented, so I guess if that had been successful, I'd probably be dead now. But because I would have had a true rock and roll lifestyle and would have, I wouldn't have faded out. That's for sure. But so yeah, that's what I always wanted to be. Honestly, if on a more realistic level, I have no idea, because I never intended this to be my career. I just took the opportunity when it came and said yes when people asked me do you want to try this? And I think that is if I went back to my 18-year-old self and say, there's one thing that you should do, is take opportunity when it comes, because what's the worst that's going to happen? You might not do well at it, and you might have to step back and take another direction. But even that's a learning, and that's a gift to your accomplishments in the end. So no idea what I might have ended up doing. I mean, my schooling was more engineering and than it was people, but I can't imagine myself ever really in a technical job. I've always been a people guy, really. You've obviously got one, because you wouldn't have asked me otherwise.
I think that in my dream world, I might have wanted to be an artist, but the world's probably better off that I'm not. And if I look back, I'm just very grateful. I'm so glad I had the career in supply chain and still do. And I think if I spoke and was to speak to the 15-year-old me now, he'd be amazed. He'd be like, oh, well done. And I knew you could do it. I just didn't know how. And I wouldn't change a thing. I'd rather be doing what I'm doing than doing less than the best as an average artist. There's better, more talented people out there. It's a hobby. I'd rather do it
Yeah,
than a living.
yeah. I think, as you say, if I had told myself at 16, 18 that I was going to do what I've done, I think I would have just laughed and went, sure. Because I don't think I really saw myself. I had no clue where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I didn't even really in those days have a burning desire to get on. I was just living life. And and I just took opportunity. And it's interesting. I think my wife was a big factor in it, because I always had such great support from her to say, yeah, go on, let's do it. Let's try it. Well, let's go to South Korea. Let's go to the Czech Republic. Let's go to Kuwait. And I think if I hadn't had her pushing me onwards as well, and had the luxury of having a wife who was happy to, support me in my opportunities, then I don't think I would have done half of it. I'd probably still be, in a mid-level job, just doing what I did. But she was a real enabler, I guess, for me. She was like that comfort blanket. I could put myself out there because I always knew she was there to catch me if I fell, and I did a few times. So
That's great.
you've got to be grateful for those around you, right?
High five to your wife. And on that note, it's probably a good place to wrap up for this week. I hope you enjoyed our first podcast. We'll be back with some more exciting questions and answers on supply chain and our experiences in it. So until next time,
Let's say goodbye.
see you soon.